Welcome to the Academy at Kimball Martial Arts 7-Day Martial Art Challenge. This is where we're going to learn how to practice and train martial arts in as little as 7 days. We're going to start with some of the basics, and we're going to focus on them, and we're going to prove to you and show you that it's really not as difficult as people think. A few basic motions and you'll get a good idea. Your awareness will become greater, your understanding of the art will. If you want to pursue it, you'll have a good foundation. So we're going to try to make this as simple and as fast as possible to get you up and running right in the comfort of your own home. So first off, what we want to work on is what builds the martial arts into a full system. And that's always going to come back down to your basics. And your basics are simply your stances, your blocks, and your strikes. From there, we can get into stance work and movements and stepping and get a little fancier, but really, without those three components done, nothing else matters. So we're going to learn from the first right up through as if you were in my studio having a private lesson. Okay, so let's begin. First off, what I want you to do is stand normal. We call this a neutral stance. And you're going to find that your feet should be under your hips. You shouldn't be leaning forward or back. So if you just swivel around a little bit, shake it out a little bit, and then just stand naturally. If your feet are facing right forward, you're in a neutral stance. This allows you to move any direction quickly. You can step back, you can step forward, you can step sideways, you can step any of the directions that you need to very rapidly. The only thing I'm going to ask you is if you stand, just stand normal for a second and then look down at your feet. If your feet are pointed outward at 45-degree angles, your toes, okay, that's probably not a good thing. That's going to create some problems later on in your training. You're going to want to have to pull those feet in. If your feet are slightly pointed inward, that's really not a big issue. If they're straight, that's fine too. Just the only thing I don't want you to do is have your feet out. Okay, so this is our neutral stance. So you've learned your first stance. Now we're going to begin. I want you to learn how to make a fist. Make a fist, all you have to do is take your hand, crunch up those fingers, and then wrap them in until you can't see your fingernails. Then take your thumb, put it over the first, the pointer finger, and pinch. And then pinch down here. You're going to get a pretty solid fist. Okay, so a fist is kind of important, right? Because if you have a fist that's loose or not formed right, and you throw it and you hit any hard object like the skull or anything like that, you can break your hand really quick. And that's not a good thing to do in a self-defense situation. So you make a fist like that, and then when you do that, you squeeze really tight. Now, as you're doing this, you're going to find out that your forearms, your biceps, your shoulders, your upper body gets a little tense. And that's another thing we don't want, because we don't want you throwing, it's going to make you slow and awkward. So there's a couple of tricks and a couple of trainings we can do very quickly to learn how to make a fist fast while still having loose arms and a tight fist. So what we're going to do is we're going to reach out, pull our hands in, curl it in, twist, like we're squeezing something really tight, then we're going to drop the arms and shake them out. Our fists are tight, but our arms are starting to get loose. When you get that feeling and you train your body like this, anytime you make a fist, your arms won't be so tense that you can't move. A lot of times when people try too hard, or if they get angry or something, they start to punch, you can literally see they throw their whole body into it. And it takes a lot of work, but the power is being dissipated all over the body. See the whole thing swinging in like that, easy to see, easy to defend against. When you make a tight fist, you punch, your arm actually has to be loose, your fist is tight. That's an easy, trainable thing. So here we go. We're going to do 10 of these. 1, shake it out. 2, shake it out. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Shake it out. Okay, so in a very short period of time, you're going to find that you can make a tight fist, solid fist, and still have a loose arm, which means you're going to have a lot quicker speed and a lot better punch. Now, we need to start the structure so you know how to make a fist. So let's go ahead and get in our first stance, the neutral. Let's make those fists Let's shake it out a little bit so we have a tight fist but a loose arm. And I'm going to have you place them on your hip. And this is just so that we can get used to where they're at. They don't necessarily have to be here. In fact, they probably will never really be here in a fight, but it's consistent. I can tell you where your hand goes, you can get it back. If you can do this every time, you can put it anywhere else you want. Okay, so we're just going to do this, and once we do this, we're going to call this our neutral stance. Okay, so our neutral stance is feet together, hands on the hips, shoulders pulled back, and then down. It's good for your posture. You're going to lift your sternum up, pull your chin down a little bit, and eyes forward. So you're going to want to make sure that this will feel a little awkward at first, especially if you don't do anything physical or anything, or if you work on a computer, you literally might feel like but it's good. It's good for your posture, and it's also good for your health, but it's really good for self-defense. Okay, so from the neutral stance, you know how to make a fist. Now we're going to learn the second stance, which is basically a forward stance. This is a left front bow because our left leg is in front. All you got to know about it is that the front leg is bent for protection, the back leg is locked out for stability. You can change the distance down depending on what you're trying to do. Right now I want to keep you very natural, very normal, and make this not a chore but easy to learn. Okay, so if you were to stand normal, forget the neutral stance and the hands, if you just take a kind of a step back and then stop, what you're going to notice is that you're about hip level. There's a very natural step distance. We're going to have to elongate that just a little bit so that you have some stability. And we don't want our feet too close together. Okay, so if I do the same thing stepping forward with my opposite leg, that's my natural gait. That's my natural step. That's just how my hips are. So if I want to do a front bow stance, I'm going to slide a little bit, just a little bit further than that. So I'm going to take the natural instinct of stepping, and I'm just going to go with it a little bit more. Okay, so I want to feel that it's a little bit of an exaggeration. So we're going to go from left to right side here. 1, we're going to come back. 2, okay, the forward one is actually pretty easy. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so now we're going to go backwards. The backwards one is what a little bit harder for people to do. You can't see behind you. Your body's naturally not going to want to drop into a good martial arts stance and be ready for everything, right? It's just not going to do that. Especially if you're stepping back, you're probably in a situation where there's a confrontation or there's a startle. Something has startled you. That usually causes for a drawing back of the body. And if your feet have never trained anything like that, it's going to go to that natural stance, and then this leg's going to pull in a little bit. Now your feet are going to be too much together, and you're going to lose a little stability, and you're not going to be able to use your feet as a weapon. So we're going to have to train our body to do what we want. So all you've got to do that is take your right leg and go back, but then down. Okay? So here's down. Here's back. This is not really what we want. Pulls you away from your opponent, sure, but it also starts to lock this leg out, puts too much weight on the back leg, which is going to be our supporting leg or our kicking leg, and you kind of pull in. So you can go back a little bit, but you need to think down. So what I want you to do, what I'm going to ask you to do is when you step back with your leg, I want you just to think down, okay? Just think down and get the feeling. Now we're going to cut off at a 45-degree angle. Okay, if you look at my angle, this is straight off the 45. If I put a big X in this room, we're going to use these angles a lot. If you're too narrow, your balance is not going to be stable. Okay, if you're too wide, you're going to be exposed, and this isn't going to work either. So the easiest way to do this is just to let the leg naturally go out, and it usually will slip out to that 45-degree angle thereabouts. And if you think down and alternate, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, forward. Now we'll just do a little exercise. We're going to go forward, forward, back, back. So it goes right, left, right, left, 2. Forward, forward, back. And you see the X pattern that we're doing here? Okay, there's the top of the one there, top of the other line. Here's the other line. There you go. 4, forward, forward, back, back. Okay, 5, just kind of imagine that X. Put your feet where the ends are. 6, in a very short period of time, your body's going to learn. 7, exactly where to step. And you do learn very quickly, by the way. 7, 8, 9, and 10. You check it out a little bit. Okay, so it's pretty easy actually so far. And martial arts can actually be easy if you learn appropriately. You don't put any stress on yourself by trying too hard, by trying to go way deep like maybe your instructor can do or what you think you should be able to do. We're going to gradually get you there. So we've got neutral stance, which is we're in the center of that X. We know how to make a fist. We know where to put them if we have to put them somewhere, right? So that we can just understand how our movements work. And we know how to go into a forward stance. We also understand, we've learned that down is better than back, with that leg being vulnerable. So that this stance is a stable stance. It's not going to be one that you can move super quick from, but we'll get to those stances later. This is just one for stability. Okay, so now we've got a neutral stance, we've got a front stance, or what we call a bow stance, and we know how to make a fist. So now let's go ahead and learn your third stance, so that we are having our base pretty solid, and our base work is usually always stances. So the horse stance basically, if you go a little wider than shoulder width apart, you put your feet down like you're on 2 railroad tracks, toes facing forward. Any issues with the knees, you can take your toes and take them out to that 45. We call this a broken horse. And then you're going to kind of sit into it. Okay, so I'm going to be sideways for you for a second. So this is a horse stance is usually used for stability from the sides. Maybe I got an opponent right here. Okay, maybe my opponent's right there. My vital organs, my center line, which goes from the nose to the teeth, chin, throat, sternum, solar plex, groin. This straight line has a lot of vulnerability here. When I turn it, I'm giving them less targets. I'm covering that up. And I have a lot of stability. The advantage is that they don't have a lot of targets. The disadvantage is half my weapons aren't toward my opponent. So, but that might be preferred in situations. So the horse stance, we're going to learn just to kind of be comfortable in, and think of it, even though I'll have you do movements to the front, I want you to think of it as a side stance. Okay, so here's a front stance. Here's a side stance. Okay, now the horse stance is kind of a little awkward at first. What you want to do is you want to push your knees out and you want to keep your back straight. Those are the two most important things. If you're doing that, you're mostly there. Then you want to start to work low. And the better you get, the lower you go, the more range of motion you have, the more options you have. If you can go from here down to here and up to here, you're going to have more options than if you can only move. However, if you can't go down there and you're forcing it and you do bad technique, that's a little different. So from your horse stance with your feet, your shoulder width, a little more than shoulder width apart, you make sure that you just feel it, push your knees slightly forward, your hips and your ankles and your shoulders, and your chin back. You just want to kind of go down. I'm pushing my knees out, straightening my back. I'm going down to that maybe not so comfortable position, but it's a little bit of a work. And then I'm going to come back up and go down a couple of 5 times here. That's 3. What I'm trying to do is teach you to go down again and not this way. Okay, that's bad. You just want to get used to this squatting or this dropping. Doesn't have to be too much. Now, before we move on, let's analyze that stance a little bit to make sure you kind of know how to practice it. In all of your motions, when you're learning, you can learn extremely quickly if you pay attention to the basics and you make sure you have consistency. Then we can layer knowledge, techniques on top of that at a very accelerated rate. But if that foundation isn't consistent, and if it's not proper, what we're layering on well, it's inappropriate and will also create the system to break later on. Okay, so if you're in a horse stance here, and then you're in a horse stance here, and then you're in a horse stance here, and sometimes you're here, that will do us no good to layer stuff on top of that. It's already a broken system. There's not consistency. I would rather have you a bit consistent and wrong than inconsistent and wrong, I guess. Okay, so what I mean by that is I would rather have you narrow, but narrow all the time, than sometimes here, sometimes here, sometimes here, sometimes here. Okay, so we have to adjust that. So here's the rule. Okay, from a horse stance, you want to be about 2 fist distance at a thumb. You do that. You take your right leg, you turn it out, and you set it down, and you pull your left leg in, so you're on the straight, and you just make 2 fists and a thumb, and you stick it right in between there. You should be somewhere within an inch or 2 of that. Okay, this is too narrow for my hips anyways. This is too wide. Okay, so once I get about that distance, I can pop up, and that's a good distance for my hips and for me to move. So you might want to do that. You might step out to your horse stance, measure it 4 or 5 times, and then do it occasionally. And what you're going to find is the body is going to adapt to that, again, really quickly. Usually with my students, I don't have to ask them to measure it after their 3rd lesson. Okay? Nobody is right in the beginning. Nobody lands in a perfect horse stance. Okay? Well, I haven't seen too many people do that anyways. They're usually here, and the next day they're here, because it's not a stance that we're in too much. So the measurement is 2 fists and a thumb. Thereabouts. A little wider if it feels more comfortable, a little narrower if you can move from there. If you feel bound up, not good. And if you feel too wide, this is hard for me to move from this position, probably is not a good thing either. So let's look at what we've done in just a short period of time. We've learned our first neutral stance. We've learned how to make a fist. Okay, we've learned a front position, and we've learned a side position. Okay, with just that, if those are perfect, we can build a pretty solid base and start learning some basic self-defense that's easy to do. So you're not going to have to learn all these really interesting poses and stuff. You can, and they're good for you later on, but right now we have to have a solid foundation and base. So what do we do from here? Where do we take our practice? Okay, so let's go ahead and do a small routine practice that you can do for a couple of minutes before. If you do it a couple of minutes a day, in 3 or 4 days, it's going to be almost second nature. You can learn it that quick. So this is what I would have you do, okay, if you're one of my students. I would have you set up, make a fist. I would have you go back to the left bow, back to the right bow, forward to the left bow, forward to the right bow. Now I'm going to have you go out to the side. Now I'm going to have you go out to the side again. Make you go to the neutral. And I would take your hands, shake them out a little bit, make sure your fists are tight. Pull your shoulders back, leave them down this time. I will go back to the left bow and hold for a second and squeeze the fists. Back to the right bow, hold for a second. Forward to that left bow, hold. Forward to the right, hold. The left leading horse, hold. Right leading horse, hold. Okay, that's pretty good. You're getting the idea. Through that, you can pretty much defend yourself against all the angles. Okay, so now we're going to get into some sort of just standing down here with your hands down. Like to get our hands up as soon as possible. So since our hands are down, like in a confrontation, I think about self-defense as something that just kind of happens, surprises. It's not, let's go. It's going to be, here comes the punch. Your hands are normally resting down. You're usually not walking around in these positions. Okay, at least I hope you're not. So if we can get our hands in those positions as fast as possible, it's easy to defend ourselves, but that is a movement. Our hands will probably start from down here at our sides. So I had you first do it from here. Now I'm going to have you put your hands where you normally rest them. We're going to go back and we're going to make a fist and we're going to bring our hands up. And then we're going to let them go and we're going to go the other direction. Okay? Then we're going to go forward. We'll go forward with the other one. Now when we go to the side, I'm going to come up to here. Okay, this hand just raises to here. This hand pulls up under my chin. I go to the other side, it's the same thing. Okay, so back, my hands are up. Back, my hands are up. Forward. Forward. Side. And side. Okay, so good squeeze, tight fists. And you've already got, again, I know you don't know what to do from there yet, unless you've trained before. But this is going to go, you can start, if you just think about it, you can start figuring out what to do from here, rather than here. Don't hit me. So what we've done in this very first lesson, I know probably doesn't seem super exciting, but what I do with my private students is I make sure that they have a solid foundation, that they understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how to do it, as well as how to practice it to get better at it. And if we do that successfully, it takes two. If we stick with it, we do it successfully, the rate of knowledge that they get after that is tremendous. It just accelerates because we can build up on it. So you've got some basic stances and you're even starting to learn to move a little bit. We just haven't added any kind of motions to it, which is actually pretty easy to do if you can get this down. You know how to make a fist. I'll give you one more little clue here before in the next lesson we're actually going to get into the striking. Your stances, front knee bent, back leg locked out, stable, shoulders back. The hands just pull up as you make the fist, and your elbow is about a fist or a hand distance away from your rib cage, and your knuckles are pointing at your opponent at about right under his nose. And you're not here. This is going to create a weird sort of punch. You're not here because your face is not going to be able to guard. So you're more here. There are different positions we can put our hands in later on. Okay, and you'll come to a feeling as you train where your hands are. When I used to do tournaments and stuff, I used more of a elbows in, my hands this direction. Okay, it's funny that I would do that in tournaments, but that's not how I fight on the street. So there are different things that you'll start to feel that you can move faster and you've got it better. Okay, but let that come to you. Okay, from now, just follow these instructions. I want your elbow, 4 fingers to a fist distance away from your rib cage. I want your fist tight. I want it in a vertical position, and I want those 2 knuckles pointing right, like a V, right toward the chin or the nose of your opponent. Too high, you can't see. Too close, it can get jammed in you. Too low, you can get hit in the head. So you're going to find that happy medium. Right now, the hands will be facing each other. Okay, we'll explain that, and that's a good way to understand it. Just sit, make sure, not awkward here. Okay, so from the total, this is neutral, classical, here's standing neutral. You're just talking to somebody. Your hands go up and that feet goes back. Then you practice to the other side. Then you go forward with it. And you go forward with it. On the sideways. Sideways. And you're back. Okay, so really easy. Okay, so day 1, okay, this is critical. You get this. Next day we're going to learn proper kicking, proper kick, and a proper block, and a proper punch. And it may not seem like this is a lot, but just with after tomorrow's lesson, just those I can do. You can get very creative. But we're also working with basic self-defense. And when I mean basic self-defense, I don't mean simple and easy. I mean the things that you might run into. So the likelihood of you running into somebody, he's spinning around and doing a spinning reverse flying roundhouse is very unlikely. Running into somebody that's trying to punch you or shove you or kick you, way more likely. Okay, so let's close it off here with one quick review. Okay, get yourself in the neutral position. Let's go back to a left front bow, right front bow, forward to a left front bow, forward to a right front bow, to a left leading horse, to a right leading horse, back to neutral. There's your first day challenge. You've done great. Practice this a little bit, and I mean just a little bit, like we did in the morning and the evening. It's 2 minutes. It will be very natural for you. If something happens, it's for you to step up and get your hands up, which is far better than stepping back and getting your hands up this way. Hey, thank you for joining me. I look forward to your tomorrow's challenge.